Hi there, welcome to the webinar, How is My Child Coping? My name is Robin Batcher and I'm an educational consultant who works with the team at Bright Light Psychology Clinic. I'm introducing Dr. Todd Cunningham, who is the founder of Bright Light Psychology Clinic. He's also an assistant professor at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, where he teaches teachers, but he also engages in a lot of research on learning disabilities, assistive technology, and supporting all learners. He is going to begin his webinar with a discussion of how we are all coping as a whole, as a family system, as a family unit. Thank you.
The first thing we have to understand is when COVID-19 happened, or another kind of issue that happened, such as the fall of the stock market in 2008, when a lot of people got lost their jobs, or Hurricane Katrina went through. Whenever we have a kind of a disaster that has a real impact on social disruptions, our normal balance that our family system has takes a real hit. Because the social disruption kind of impacts us as parents in terms of like job loss, financial insecurities. We lose our own support networks through the social distancing issues and restrictions that were put on place. Though they're starting to relax now. But we also have other issues that kind of hit in, such as the disruption to schooling. So it's children and our youth who no longer have their regular outlets of social interactions that are going on. These social disruptions, they have impacts right on the caregivers, our well-being, our own psychological distress that takes place, new parenting stresses that we've all been going through, having to be both parent and teacher. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old at home, and I know that we all had to learn about how daddy now was going to be teacher and get used to that. But at the same time, some of us also had to continue on with our jobs. So how, balancing the need to be teacher, but also still being employed, and also still being a partner, and also still parent, father or mother. And the other thing that comes out of this is also just our own mental health symptoms that we might begin to show, our own anxiety towards what has been going on, our own kind of depressive symptoms from the fatigue that begins to emerge as things continue on. Another thing to really take into consideration, I'll go down to the family unit, is then how does this all impact the parent-child relationship? As the child kind of gets disrupted from their day-to-day interactions and losing the routines they have, some students really show these types of transition periods. They show it through kind of more what we call externalizing behavior, being more disruptive, being more off task, which requires then as parents, often we're trying to get them back on task. And we get frustrated when they're not listening to us. And then we kind of start to get angry. And as we get angry, then their emotions elevate. And so then they become more disruptive and off task. And suddenly we have a wonderful interaction going on. Or we might be feeling that we're very distant. We're constantly having to be working, and then we have a child who wants our attention coming up. And during a Zoom call, soon we get Zoom bombing from children coming left, right, and center, trying to put themselves back into the line of our attention. That's going on. We have also within the family relationships, or the marital subsystem, in terms of, if you're with your partner, how's that relationship going? How are they going? How are you coping together? Sibling systems are also very interesting. How are the two, are there two kids in the house, and how do they get along? Are they constantly on top of each other and fighting and kind of trying to one up and outdo each other? And therefore there's conflict all the time, and therefore they need to be separated? Or are they actually supporting each other, where they're actually good friends and able to help each other through kind of these situations? or the only child. And a lot of my friends who have kids who have only one child often talked about the loneliness that their kids begin to show, usually by kind of month two of this, not having those daily social interactions that they used to. And on all this stuff, we also have the kind of pre-existing family vulnerabilities that are out there, economic hardships, the racism, and that's going on, um, the caregiver and child overall mental health and supports, or kids with special needs, other health considerations, family relationships and dynamics, histories of child trauma and adversities. So there's other stressors that could be already present in the system that this is all being um, dropped onto. And with all this has a direct impact on kind of the child's adjustment to how well they are handling the situation, their own emotional behaviors or problems, their behavioral functioning, academic problems that might be um, already existing, but or might be now developing, and also the strain on the peer relationships that begin to emerge. So in the end, we have a complex system. And when we bring disruptions to it, it creates a new stress for the whole system, and the whole system begins to have to figure out how to rebalance and readjust and, around it. So, so when we think about the child adjustment issues, then the first thing we really want to do is think about what are some common signs that we're looking for if we're beginning to worry about if our children are doing okay. And some of the key things to kind of just be in mind, to be looking for, are difficulties managing emotions. So suddenly children becoming or youth becoming more irritable than they used to be, crying more often, getting angry more easily, um, being more kind of whiny or having more temper tantrums beginning to emerge. We're seeing a real change in their overall kind of emotional regulation that's that's have that's developing. We also might see them having difficulties making good decisions, or even making decisions at all, getting stuck in kind of a limbo of not being able to choose what to do, or what not to do, or choosing to do things that are bad decisions, not following family rules, such as maybe around social distancing, or making healthy choices about what they're eating, or what they're watching. So we might see an increase in risky behaviors that begins to develop. We might find difficulties, new problems within the relationships that begin to emerge. Children who used to be obedient and easy to get along with suddenly aren't, or a breakdown in a sibling relationship might begin to emerge. We might hear them talking about more physical problems, such as aches or pains, or stomach aches, headaches, or other new physical symptoms that begin to emerge as their system is under so much stress. Literally, it starts to come out in physical manifestations. You might see a kind of a withdrawn of your child or youth, what kind of feeling that they're not connected to you or others within the family. So a pulling away, wanting to spend more time by themselves in the room, listening to just music all the time, and not really engaging with the rest of the family. You also might notice them kind of being in a dark room more often, sleeping a lot more. You might also see difficulties with sleep patterns. Often it can be either falling asleep at night. Usually young children have a lot of worries that go through their, well, we all have worries that when we lay down at night, our brains start to think about what's going on and in the future. And so often this is a time when children and youth often have difficulties because their brains are flooded with the worries that are going on about the safety of themselves and others, and what life might look like, or the losses that they have felt. And so therefore they have a hard time, again, getting their brains to kind of rest and get to a point where they can enter sleep. Or because of that, they had a hard time going to sleep, or a lack of energy, then they don't want to wake up in the morning. Now, teenagers in general, usually kind of about 14 onward, have a harder time waking up at 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, and usually typically go to bed later and wake up at a later time. It's just part of their natural rhythms of adolescence. But if you start seeing this dragging on all the way through the day, then that then becomes a problematic sign. Not willing to do other activities that they once did. So avoidance of things that they enjoyed in the past, maybe doing game night or going for a walk or talking to a friend. And the other thing you might see is a constant talking about COVID-19 or what's going on, where you see it become the major theme in all their play, and how in the end the characters are always ending up in a distress situation. So these are all signs to be looking for. What we're really looking for is a significant change in children's behavior, in youth's behaviors, where the new behaviors are becoming maladaptive and becoming impairing to the interactions, the relationships, the engagement in activities that are going on. And again, this really comes back to these as a result of this more global change that's happening both in our society, but also the stressors that change in our society has had on the family units, and how that can impact the way the children and youth are reacting to it. So to be able to kind of help with the coping of our children, then the first thing we have to do is kind of take down that, in the airlines, they always say, put on your mask before you put on the mask of the person beside you, on your dependent. We first have to start to think about ourselves and look after ourselves, because as the parents and caregivers of our children and youth, we need to be in a place where we can do that. If our emotions are dysregulated, if we are getting mad all the time, if we are depressed and withdrawing from our children all the time, if we are not creating and supporting healthy relationships within our family unit, then that's going to have a huge impact on our children's adjustments. If we are fighting all the time with our partners, then that's going to have an impact on our children's, on how well our children are relating. And so for us, we really need to kind of begin to have some healthy coping ideas, to really think about, to self-reflect and see how am I doing right now? Where am I in my stress tolerance, from a 0 of 1, not really feeling stressed, to a level of 10 where I feel completely overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis and just can't figure out how to escape this all, in terms of the worries. Try and understand my own worries I'm having and label those worries so I can begin to externalize those and then understand them. We need to come up with our own daily plan, so we have our own routines being developed in place. We'll talk about the needing to continue on with routines with our children, even though that school's kind of ended. We need to have our family routines in place, a daily routine to allow for predictability through the days. But we ourselves might feel that there's an unlevel of predictability, and therefore we need to be able to start to create some of that plan so we can see what are happening. We need to look after our own sleep hygiene. We need to make sure that we're going to bed so that we are not watching screens an hour before we go to bed, so our brains can really have this ability to start to shut down. We need to be able to monitor our own worry thoughts as we're laying there in bed, to ensure that we're able to fall asleep. And if we aren't able to do that, then being able to do some coping mechanisms around this, and make sure that we're going to bed at the same time every single night and waking up at about the same time each day, so that we have a constant routines that are going on. Our brains, when it comes to sleep, really need good routines around that, and sufficient sleep. We also need to remind ourselves about what's good out there. Remind ourselves about the great relationships or these wonderful little people that we have, and thinking about great opportunities in the past that we've had with them, and trying to think about how to recreate those in the future. So really keep a gratitude journal, so they keep the positive thoughts up there. It's very easy during times of stress that we lose sight of positive things that are happening in our lives. It's very easy for us just to pay attention to the stressors, the significant stressors that are impacting us. The reason for that is that's the way our brains are built. Our brains are built to focus on things that are worrying, things that are a threat to us. but that causes a lot of overall stress, a lot of anxiety or depression. So we need to make sure that we also find time to reflect on those good times that we've had, things that we're very grateful for in the past and currently in our lives. And make time for us to connect to our support network, either a friend, our partner, a relative, a parent. We need to still stay socially connected in some way. And if we're not feeling social connected, we don't feel connected, trying to think and find that person that we can connect with. The best predictor of child mental health and adult mental health is having one reciprocal friend, where I say that you're my friend and you say that you are my friend, and that we connect and we talk and we share what is going on. We're very social beings and we need those social connections. And we do this, if we really want to look after our children and we're worried about our children, then we need to do this first to ensure that we are doing well. If you're feeling that you are overwhelmed, if you're feeling that you yourself are not coping, and there's definitely professionals out there, psychologists out there that work with adult population, which is important. Or you might just want to look at some of the other free resources that already are online. The COVID-19 workbook is a free resource that you can download, and it kind of takes you step by step through many of the things I was just talking about to kind of do your own self-reflection, your own self-assessment, and begin to develop some of those positive and healthy styles and thinkings that are needed so that we ourselves stay in a good position. Another key thing for us, again, is to going back and understanding the importance of the social connection out there. When we experience stress in life, as we experience stress, our bodies go through a certain mechanisms. Our brains are built to go through a certain set of responses. Stress in general is just a measurement of how much energy our body is using at any given time. And when we're in a situation where the brain is perceiving a danger, an actual danger, then the body, the organism, increases the stress level on our body to be able to engage us in behaviors that are trying to help protect us and the loved ones around us from those dangers. And so this is what we call kind of the stress curve that emerges. As stress, so this is or arousal curve as it goes up and comes back down. So when we initially have a threat that is perceived and our stress levels start to go up very quickly, this is where social engagement comes in. This is where we can connect with a partner, a friend, a relative, someone where we can say, hey, I'm having a hard time right now. I need to talk through this. And they might not necessarily give the best advice, but at least you're talking with someone and you can be able to commiserate with someone else about the situations and kind of just be felt that someone else is hearing you and can be able to be there to support you doing the situations. Just in that self is a big protective factor then that can help alleviate the overall arousal that's going on, help the brain manage its stress level. However, when that social engagement is not there, it's not being efficient for us in what's going on because maybe the relationships are themselves under stress, then our brains go into the next situation, which is the fight or flight situation. It is looking for danger. We go into a hyperarousal situation where we are really looking for danger that's out there. And the problem with the fight or flight is we get a lot of different chemicals being dumped in our brain. One of those is cortisol. And what cortisol does is it's supposed to it helps to regulate the fight or flight system. However, cortisol is a natural, it's actually a neurotoxin. The reason why young children who get really scared kind of wet themselves is because they have too much cortisol in their system and they have to get it out, have to pee it out of themselves. When we get really over aroused, we cry. Part of the crying, the tear system is getting that cortisol quickly out of our system. Cold sweat is getting cortisol out of our system. We need to get rid of this chemical. However, if we're having it in small doses for a very long time, then cortisol does build up in our system and it actually can impair our ability to actually think critically and make good decisions. If we stay in the fight or flight for too long, if we're in this level too long, and then we will finally go up into what we call kind of the final level, which is the final threat. And this is kind of when the body has basically used up all its energy and it goes into shutdown mode. It says, I can't deal with this anymore. This is too overwhelming. And this is where kind of depression begins to take in. This is when we disengage completely to basically try and recoup by sleeping, by withdrawing, um, and trying to recoup. But as you come out of depression, then you will go back into the fight or flight system. And often a lot of people kind of move in and out of the fight or flight system. And again, we see this with our children and our youth. We can see them kind of move sometimes in that fight or flight system, or moving between the fight or flight and the depressive or the freeze mechanisms. So we need to be aware of that, and us ourselves need to be doing it. And so the first thing is that social connection and making sure that we are connected. And in that connection, part of that is then also then really focusing on building family resilience. So again, if we want to protect our children, we have to start with our family unit, and we're going to work at the family unit to be able to build in those resiliencies that we need to do. And we're going to do this through building and maintaining the family relationships that are there. We need to optimize the family belief systems that we have, and then find time to allow our brains to rest within that context. So when we talk about building and maintaining of the family relationships, really what we're looking about is kind of finding that time during the day where we really connect with our children and our youth. And this doesn't have to be, the research says it doesn't have to be large quantities of time. It's not like, oh my goodness, I have to spend all afternoon every single day with them. That's not what it's saying. It's saying that we need to have regular quality time when we connect with them. Sitting down and reading, playing games, setting up a date night's a wonderful thing, even if it's in within the house, having an ice cream date night or something like that, where you plan, even 2 days in advance about the date night. So the child, and you can talk about that each day about this kind of neat time that you're going to have together coming up. It is taking the time each day for going for walks or actually having dinner together, saying, I'm going to stop work each day at a certain time, put those other things aside so that we all can come around the dinner table. Now, for young children, they might need to stand, or if they're anxious, they might need to stand at the dinner table, but we bring everybody around and we all kind of talk about what's going on and what's happening in our days and share. We need to find those times that create quality connection with our kids. And in the end, maybe everybody is just feeling tired. And so Friday night, everybody kind of cuddles up together on the couch and watches a movie. As long as that's not every single night, even doing that can be a good time where we're setting up aside time where we're coming together around that. Now, the other thing within these relationships is also sibling relationships. We need to be able to help our kids, if there's two of them, help them to be able to connect with each other. Usually, if there's when children are 3 years and under, they're kind of seen as a cohort. When they're over 5 years, they're kind of seen as two different cohorts of kids. Usually you have an older child who can kind of look after a younger child, but when they get closer in age, especially around that kind of 3-year point, then we see them really as kind of as a cohort together. And as parents, the first thing we need to do, especially in an environment where we're all kind of being stuck close together on a regular basis, is we need to respect children's unique needs. Right now in my family, my oldest is falling in love with Nancy Drew and is writing Nancy Drew constantly. And my youngest is driving her nuts. She wants to have her playmate back. She wants to play. But we need to give the older one time. She needs to have that time to be able to read on her own. And then we need to be able to play with the younger one or find activities for the younger one to be able to do. We also have to really avoid comparison of our children. There's nothing more that creates kind of hostility in the sibling relationships is when parents start to compare one child to another child. All of our kids have strengths and challenges, and we need to be aware of that. And we can't be saying, hey, look how good your sibling's doing versus the other one. And the other thing we have to remember is our kids are also all in different developmental, their own developmental timelines, and older ones will be able to do more than younger ones. So we just have to watch for those comparisons, because that's a real dagger into kids. We need to set the ground rules for the relationships that we're having. We need to kind of talk with them, help them figure out, especially if they're about 5 years and under and they are playing together, what does that play look like? How do you play? And for some kids, we have to understand that they just won't have mutual play together, and it's better for them just to play on their own. Sometimes with older, when the genders are different, there can be disruptions in the place, in play, and it's better for them to kind of have it. But we need to set those ground rules. No taking toys out of our hands. Talking respectfully for each other. If something does emerge, the ability to take a break for a minute and then come back in. We also need to encourage the good behaviors that are going on. So when we see good behaviors, really reinforce those behaviors. Say, hey, I really loved how the two of you played dolls this afternoon, or it was great to see the two of you running around in the backyard together playing tag. You did such a good time taking turns of being it. And also, we can't always get involved in all their battles. We need to allow them to work it out. Now, if it's getting too physical or getting too verbally abusive, then we need to step in, and we need to model how to have those conversations. But we do need to allow them to work out their own disagreements. We can't always be hovering in the corner and then jumping in the second we hear a disagreement, trying to keep things together. Some allowing them to work through their problems is very natural. And we also have to anticipate when those problems are going on. As it gets later in the day, I know for my 5-year-old, she has a harder time coping in general because she's tired. And so I'm going to minimize how much of the kind of tasks that we're going to do, independent play that's going to lead to frustration that might emerge, and have more of a kind of a wound down time. And in the end, we just have to love them. We have to be there. We have to create, again, as we talked about, create those opportunities to really connect with them and let them know that they are special to us in the ways that we do. Now, the research has also said in some cases, parents might not be available. You might not be the ones who are able to do it, or you might be a grandparent or another friend of the family, or even a relative, and might say the parents aren't able right now due to their own stressors or mental health issues, aren't able to connect, and that's okay. We don't have to have necessarily the parents being the individuals who create that relationship. It only takes a single supportive relationship. We need one good relationship emerging. And so that could be one parent with the child. It could be a grandparent. It could be a friend. It could be a community member. It could be an extended family member. But we need one relationship with that child. And so if I am a grandparent and see that my children aren't able to cope very well, and that's having an impact on the grandchildren, then I need to make that connection with the grandchildren and work on establishing that as an outside observer into the system. By having that one relationship, it will again mitigate a lot of the other mental health issues that children will receive. Children who experience the most mental health challenges don't have any supportive or healthy relationship within their worlds. Another key thing within the family systems that is really important is we have to kind of optimize our family belief system and really talk about the messaging that we're talking about when it comes to the social disruption, comes to kind of COVID-19, that we're not kind of trying to walk around it and not talk about it. We also don't want to be just always having the news on and always hearing the doom and gloom statistics are coming out, and always kind of talking about the negativity that's happening. We have to watch the overall messaging that we are giving to children, as well as monitor our own family beliefs about what's going on. And here's some really free resources. These are great free resources out there. It's from Beyond Words. It's a UK publisher. And what's really great is none of these books that talk about, beating the virus, a good day and bad day during lockdown, and then two more that are about to come about a child who has been in remote schooling, and now the transition back into regular schooling. They don't have words in them. They're just pictures. And what it is a time for the family to kind of sit down and talk about the pictures, put the storyline to the pictures as they deal, as you watch the characters go through different in scenarios that are out there. And it's a great time to just elicit that conversation that is really important, very helpful for the family to have. We need to be talking about this in a healthy way. We need to have a healthy belief system that as a family and working together as a team, we are going to get through this. And part of that might be, as the healthy belief system, is that the kids are okay to play and look after themselves for a period of time while mom and dad have to do some work. And when mom and dad are done that work, then we will come back together as a group. And really giving the children and the youth that some more autonomy during those times when we have to work, to allow them to be able to play in a safe way. As well, not only do we have to worry about the kind of message, but we also have to find time to rest. Again, our brains are often in this hypervigilance, this fight or flight situation. There are things to be worried about right now. When we go outside, we see people with masks on. We're having to do physical distancing. Grocery stores are no longer feeling like a nice place to drop by anymore. Well, I'm not sure if for me, the grocery store is ever a fun place to go to, but now I really find it's a stressful location as I look up and down the aisles. Our children watch us model that fear, and they take on that fear as well. They see us being worried about things, and so therefore they become worried about things. And so therefore they are learning from us about the fears out there. And so it's important for all of us when we are in this more hypervigilant state, because there is a perceived and is a threat in the environment around us, that when we are in our homes and when we are in the safety of our homes, that we need to find times to allow our brains to calm down. We need to find times to be able to relax, to allow our fight or flight system to move down back into that resting state. And so it allows that cortisol to get out of our system. And so a really good resource for younger children is sitting like a frog. It's a wonderful kind of book with activities in it that a family can go through to be able to work on being mindful and finding times to have those 5-minute, 10-minute breaks, so that we are able to calm ourselves and re-engage within the environment in the present, and not be always thinking about the possible threats around us. For youth, there's other great resources out there as well in terms of mindfulness. The Minds Up program is a really good one. It's developed for teachers to deliver, but definitely a parent can adopt the Minds Up program for their youth to be able to work. And sometimes older youth need to be able to talk with someone else about how to be able to develop some of these healthy routines. And part of those healthy routines is sleep. It is so important that our children and our youth and us are getting enough sleep on a regular basis. When we have that sleep, it actually reduces the overall cortisol. It helps to flush out a lot of the plaque that begins to build up in our system, and it gives us more energy the next day to take on the challenges of being in kind of more of a lockdown, or having to do the physical and social distancing around us. So having enough sleep on a daily basis is really good. And sometimes it's hard right now, especially with the sun staying up longer and just disruption to our routines. But it is important to be thinking about that and ensuring that we are getting that quality sleep that we need. The other big one is taking these having physical activity. Physical activity helps with sustained attention. It helps with engagement in any activity, from academics to other things. And so going through and having, again, as a family, having a routine where you engage in physical activity. In my family, we've come to love the Body Coach TV. Where they had this wonderful PE with Joe, and we've all our family has fallen in love with Joe, who does these wonderful activities on a day-to-day basis and on the weekend for the family. And we just keep going and watching him do it. He comes drop stuff in costumes, and or he kind of steps it up a bit. So instead of being Spider-Man, he then goes into being Batman, and gives even harder intensity. Or suddenly he comes in as a unicorn, or he brings his own 2-year-old into the situations. Wonderful way as a family to be able to stay physically active during this time. And part of that physical activity also is just making sure that we get out in nature and have some, when we can, have some good physical distancing walks, but getting into our green spaces when we can, just to be able to reconnect. Again, being part of nature is a really, really healthy thing. It might just be a lap around your building, or going to the kind of local park down the street. Just having that daily getting out of the house or the apartment, when long as you physically can do that, to be able to connect with that green into a green space. And in some cases, when all these things are challenging and things aren't going well, then it's okay to be able to reach out to others, to kind of increase that support network for your family. And that's why there are many people in the mental health field who are available to be able to work with parents and children and youth to be able to deal with many of the stressors that are presenting in this new kind of world that we're part of right now. So with that, I say thank you, and I open it up to any questions. Back to you, Robin.
Thank you, Dr. Cunningham. I just want to remind, for some people that came in late, if you do have questions, please use the chat box to type them. But we had a number of questions come in during registration, so we'll start off with those. A huge range of questions for a huge age range, so we'll start with the youngest. We had a question from a family that has a very young child, a 15-month-old, who pre-COVID was going to programs sometimes twice a day and engaging with other kids. And now with the change, and they tried some sort of Zoom sessions of these online classes, and their child had no interest. And so they're worried about their child's social development, because they're not in a position where they can engage with other families due to being high risk. So what sort of advice would you give to a family that has a child really young and sort of key social development time?
Yeah. Excellent question. Excellent question. The one thing is, children are very resilient. Kids are amazingly resilient individuals, and they often bounce back. And probably when we get through all this stuff and you start to engage in those activities, there might be a hesitance at first. They might have some separation anxiety, some social anxiety that begin to emerge. But then we can just help model them through and do the things that we would have done with them kind of when they were 15 months old, do again with them at when they're older. Being present in the back of the room and allowing them to start just naturally engage with other youth their age, and slowly removing ourselves from that environment, giving them a lot of praise about the excellence that they did in being able to transition into that place. So we might need to spend more time on that transition piece to allow them to know it's okay to be able to engage with others and praise them for when they're doing it. So there might be a longer transition period, but then over time that they will naturally just start to pick it up and continue to engage. So as long as we as a family are continuing to socially engage with that youth, they're going to learn the social skills from us, and they'll be able to transfer those over to play with the younger individuals.
Excellent, thank you. So now our next question is about a school-age child, a little bit earlier, a little bit older, around grade 1 or 2 age, and this family is experiencing sort of two ends of the extreme. So on one side, the child gets very upset when mommy is out of sight and didn't tell them where they were going, but then on the other hand, we'll switch and say, get away from me, I want to be alone. So the family's sort of wondering, with these two extremes of, I want you close, but I don't want you anywhere near me, how would you handle those two extremes? What would your advice be?
Those two extremes are coming from the same place. So it is a heightened level of stress that the individual is under. And so therefore they want the parent to be close, to be able to help regulate them. So they don't want to lose that thing. But at the same time, they want autonomy in their life, and they don't want the mother or the parent there. And so overall, they're having more difficulties with some of that regulation. And so therefore those behaviors are coming out of that. So the question first is helping them to feel more secure about the relationship between the parent and the child. So, again, working on those relationships, trying to find times to have more play, and at the same time allowing them, saying that I know you can be able to cope with these situations, and giving them a little bit more autonomy maybe in the decisions that they're making on a day-to-day basis, so they can feel that they're in control of their lives. But the bigger one is this is that is a symptom that there is more strain within their system. They're under more levels of stress, and so therefore needing to try and problem solve around where is that coming from, it would be a key piece. And then as you do that, you might see a change within it. The other thing we also have to watch out for is there's also natural milestones that kids naturally go through in development. So there's a natural point where kids do push away from the parents more often. They are like, I want my autonomy. I want to be independent, but at the same time, they get their more of that independence, and they're like, I'm not sure if I'm actually ready for that independence yet. Come back to me, mother. So there is these natural pieces that go on as well. And so it's sometimes hard, I think, while we're in kind of this pandemic mode, to also not to kind of look at what natural development is, and almost pathologize natural development. I think the key thing to watch for is, does this become chronic, and does this become impairing? Those are the key things that we're always looking for. When is this to a point where the child is no longer functioning in a way they can't be there with the parent, and once the parent does re-engage, they have a kind of a meltdown? If that's happening on a regular basis, then that's something that we need to really look at, and it's probably due to those child's overall stress loads that are going on, and we need to be able to intervene there. Again, one of the best interventions around a lot of this is just finding that good quality time for parent-child interactions where they do something together, to be able to kind of have a fun and good quality bonding moment.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, now we're going to jump to older, around teens. We have two questions about teens. The first one is about a 12-year-old boy who is so fearful about contracting COVID that he refuses to engage with anyone outside of the family. So, playing outside or doing a previously enjoyed activity, won't wear a mask, and basically is saying, I'm not going to feel normal until there's no COVID. And it's having an effect on, the whole family and the type of activities they're engaging in.
Mm-hmm.
How could a family support that child?
Yeah. So I think as a family, the workbook that I originally talked about that would be good for a parent, as a parent and a child and a youth of that age, could actually go through that. Go through this together, to be able to look at this, because in doing this, it's going to elicit some of those what we call those worried thoughts that are coming out, and trying to identify where those worried thoughts are and contextualize those worried thoughts better. So yes, that kind of behavior, though it is there's a worry out there. It's an invisible disease, but it is having now a level of impairment where it is preventing them from engaging in certain activities. And so therefore, doing kind of a guided, parent-youth guide through the workbook would be a good way to be able to start to address some of those issues. If it continues to be at a chronic like for too long, again, that's where you might want to get a professional involved to be able to help with some of those that situation for a bit, to again kind of help someone else outside the family kind of challenge what we call those worried thoughts that are going on, and be able to allow them to understand what is a just worry thought and what's not an unjust worry thought, and be able to then what we call cognitive distortions that begin to emerge, be able to challenge those cognitive distortions, and give them the tools to recognize when they are having a cognitive distortion, and what to do when they're having that.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question about teens, and it's around gaming, video gaming specifically. A parent of a 13-year-old child says all their son wants to do pretty much all day is play video games. But they're socializing with their friends through video games. They've got their headset on, they're talking with their friends. And so the parent is a little bit torn about, you know, this is their one way of socializing with friends because they're not going out and socializing in person, but it's a lot of time on gaming. So, you know, how do you balance?
Well, video games are complicated. So the first thing is video games inherently dysregulate kids. They spike the dopamine system, they spike the adrenaline system up very, very high. It allows for that intense engagement that they have because it's actually reinforcing to their brains to be on those activities. And when they come off it, they actually feel withdrawal symptoms often because of it. So too much video gaming on a day-to-day basis in general is not recommended in any situation, because it's definitely priming the brain just to kind of go back to that level of activity and engagement. It's very important to monitor our overall level of gaming, but in doing that is to replace it with a more positive behaviors or positive activities. Now, in the past, we could do that much more easily. We go swimming, we go to the karate club, we go out and go bike riding, we do all these.
Thank you everyone for joining us for today's webinar, and to Dr. Cunningham for the presentation. We did get cut off, so the last few questions are not available in this recording. I just wanted to finish up by saying that if you do feel like you need some support, please reach out to a mental health professional. Bright Light Psychology Clinic offers individual therapy as well as assessments and academic intervention. However, we're also available as a resource to help you find the right support that you need. Thank you.